Hello everyone, and welcome to Hill Street. Today's story is My Name is Dr. James Faust by Man of F6W Words. If you end up enjoying this story, please leave a like. And if you enjoy hearing stories from me, please subscribe and become a resident of Hill Street and let me know how I'm doing in the comments. Now, let's get to this nightmare. Where to begin, if beginning again is what I dread? I prefer to tell of an end that I cannot yet see, but a story always has a start. That's the way of things, I suppose. My name is Dr. James Faust, former physicist and one esteemed author, and this is my obituary. Please excuse me if my language indicates a better story. I'm afraid it's necessary for reasons that will soon be explained. And excuse me again for any misspelled words or sloppy grammar. My hands are quite shaky, considering. No, that's not right, not proper. This story cannot start with me. If there's any true beginning, it's him. The man who started it all, my patron, benefactor, and nemesis. Enter Mr. M. As I said, I was once a physicist. When you hear that, you might be thinking of great scientific discoveries about our universe after all. That's what you read on the headlines. But what those articles always ignore is the incredible boredom of the average man in my field. Only a few of us can achieve greatness, while the rest are stuck with equations and theorems proven true decades ago. As it may sound, I was quite unsatisfied. In fact, I aspired to be a writer. It was a dream of mine. I'd sometimes post short stories on online forums, but I must admit, I was never very good. But I'd heard of a man who could train my talents and give me the greatness that I craved. One day, I had the misfortune of meeting him. He decided to meet me at a local opera, at a high balcony. He was devious enough to pay for both of us and a dinner while we were there. I walked through the door just as the light dimmed and the orchestra began a melancholy tune. I only saw his face in deep shrouds of shadow, but I felt that he could see mine much clearer. Mr. M, I presume, I began. I'm James. We spoke on the phone. Of course, he chuckled. Dr. Faust, pleasure to meet you. Please, we have business. I took a seat beside him, marveling at the spread of food he purchased. Feel free to have what you like, doctor, said the strange man. No, thank you, I declined. I wouldn't hope to strain your hospitality. And then we sat still for an uncomfortable period, each in silence, listening to the rising voices of the opera. I was brewing my thoughts, but he appeared to have thought everything out already. Indeed, showing no discomfort or even thoughtfulness, simply watching. So, Mr. M, I began, I hear you can help me improve my writing. He smiled then, in a way that made me nervous. Of course, it's my entire business. You come highly recommended, I continued, but no one could tell me how you do it. You make talents appear out of nothing. It's hard to explain, he said, to someone who hasn't experienced it. And many people claim the experience was unnatural. He snorted in humor. It's just a word you use to excuse ignorance, a brush under the rug. He had my full curiosity now, and faith. Perhaps not my trust, but I wanted nothing more than to have a chance at fulfilling my dreams. I wanted excitement and fame, and if this man was truly a miracle worker, then I was eager enough to give anything. The voices of the singers rose to full volume now, crying, "O merveille, et moi le plaisir." "Dr. Faust," he said, "there is the matter of price. I only want a simple thing, really. Once a month, I'll give you a prompt, and you will write a story accordingly. There's no other price. You don't even need to credit me. In exchange, you will create great works, my dear doctor." The mysterious Mr. M slid me a contract containing everything he said in writing. There was a space for my signature, and in place of his, he penned a single M in a serpentine font. "That's quite a devil's bargain," I replied as I signed eagerly. He turned his head in just the right way, and for the first time, I saw a hint of light glimmer against his eyes. "It's a devil's world you live in, doctor." He was a miracle worker indeed. As soon as I reached my home, I checked my text. One was sent to me from an unknown number, asking me to write a simple story about some boys trapped on a desert island. So engrossed in my writing was I that it never dawned on me that, for one, it was well past midnight, and for another, I'd never given Mr. M my phone number. No, I was too busy to care. After I finished writing, I looked it over and realized that I didn't need to revise or edit anything. It was already perfect. The longer I looked, instead of finding flaws, I was only brought closer to tear from the magnificence. It was beautiful. I immediately posted it to as many creative writing forums as I could find, and every time it was eaten up by the crowds. They cried the deep characters, exciting plot, exceptional prose, and much more. For once, I felt the relief of my work being praised, and like that, I was hooked. "Thank you," I texted back to Mr. M. "You'll create great things," he replied, and I believed him. Spurred on by his sweet words, writing quickly became a craving. It was so easy, so simple, and yet I received adoration for every word. I don't know how it happened. Perhaps it must have been unnatural. Such skills don't grow so large overnight, and yet they had, and I wasn't one to look a gift horse in the mouth. Unfortunately, that's what the Trojans said. This continued for several months. My hands now shook if they hadn't felt the touch of a pen or keyboard once a day. And I began reciting my own words when I was absent of either, writing without a medium. Sometimes my friends or co-workers heard me whisper under my breath, and while they loved the words, they were concerned for me. Every once in a while, I'd wonder if I was mad, but it was always worth it when someone walked up to me on the street and recognized me. "You're James Faust," they'd say. "I love your work." I had fans, admirers. I couldn't stop now. Mr. M's messaged me monthly. A story about a puppet who wants to be a real person. I began to publish collections of short stories at once. Real publishers accepted me. Oh, the pride I felt. Of course, with all greatness, sacrifices were made. My girlfriend came home for weeks and saw me engrossed in my writing. "I feel like you love your own words more than me," she said. I, of course, said nothing, as everything she said was true, and I was too busy to respond. She left me shortly after, but Mr. M messaged me monthly. One about a whaler obsessed with a dangerous whale. Of course, I felt heartbroken and angry. In fact, these feelings were the perfect muse for my next story. I channeled all the emotions I felt and kept writing. My family didn't like this. "You're obsessed," they say. "You need therapy, not more writing." Unfortunately for everyone, they didn't have enough of a case to admit me without my consent, and I was too busy for therapy. After all, Mr. M kept messaging me monthly. One about a boy who discovers that he's a wizard and goes to a magical school. When I needed to speak, I kept my beautiful prose. Every word from my lips was pure poetry. My colleagues loved it, of course, but found it hard to understand me at times. Soon, they too worried. They tried to make me stop writing, so I quit. I was too busy for work anyway. And through it all, Mr. M messaged me monthly. One about a monster that hunts you in your dreams. One about a magical cursed ring and a dark lord. One about a pig and his friend Spider, and so on and so on. Perhaps I could have been a great writer forevermore, subsisting solely off of a talent and my easily earned money. And all of these past sacrifices made inconsequential, forgettable. But the problem with fame is that without security, all you are is a target. And while one may succeed in the present, all it would take is one failure for the vultures to descend. I was working on my last story, one commissioned by Mr. M himself. I was to write a story about a trio of children who discovered a magical wardrobe that brings them to a magical land. Business as usual. Then it happened. One critic remarked on its resemblance to the Chronicles of Narnia. I was shocked. I hadn't even thought of it. I was blinded by my own grandeur that I didn't give a second thought to potential plagiarism. Then people looked deeper into the other works. They found near direct copies to books by greater authors: The Lord of the Flies, Charlotte's Web, Harry Potter, Moby Dick, and even The Lord of the Ring. I wasn't even aware until now. It's devastating. Once beloved fans were mocking me. Loyal publishers shunned me. I had long since lost my girlfriend, family, and job. Now, I had nothing. I realized that Mr. M, my once thought benefactor, was truly deceiving me. He'd tricked me into plagiarism, into losing first everything but my writing, and then that too. He was a cruel man, and he was the reason I'm in this dreadful position. It's currently been a month since this event. I tried to swear off writing, and I ignored the blasted Mr. M's latest message. It would have been unthinkable months prior to renege on this infernal deal, but my grief has long since consumed me. Instead of writing his evil story, I only wallowed in my misery. But my hands hurt if I'm not writing. I was wary, woozy, hysterical. I needed to taste that glory again. It's a greater craving than anything I've ever experienced. Even since I declined Mr. M's latest request, I lost my touch. I can't write as I once did. The compelling emotions, the tension, the beauty, it's all gone. And when I pen my incoherency, and I see what I am left with, juxtaposed with what I once was, I weep. I must have messaged Mr. M 1,000 times, demanding answers, a solution, or a reply of any kind. But he only sent back one message: "You broke the contract. I will no longer uphold my end. If you wish to speak further, meet me at the Opera House." I was evicted that day. Without any funds left for rent, I suppose I had nowhere else to go. I met the dark Mr. M at the same balcony. He once again enshrouded as the lights dimmed and the voices rang. "Dr. Faust," he began, as friendly as last we spoke. "Do we have further business?" "You demon," I spat. "You ruined my life. I can never write again, and I have nothing left." "Wrong on both accounts," he replied warmly. "There is a chance you may write as well again. It's a simple matter of a new contract. And you do have something left, my dear doctor." He leaned forwards conspiratorially. "You still have your soul." He leaned backwards again. "Tell me, Faust, what would you give for a chance at the greatness again? For that admiration?" My hand clenched in pain as the words came from my throat unbidden. "Anything." The words of the opera behind us rang as the figure smiled and pulled forth a new contract. "I hope," I whispered, my hand shaking as I signed my name. "I hope that we never speak again, Mr. M." "Please," he chuckled. "We are so well acquainted now. You may call me Mephisto." My name is Dr. James Faust, now revered author and former owner of my soul.